Hello, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be when you all are tuning in to this broadcast. I am your international award winning author, literary extraordinaire, and awe-inspiring coach, Tennille M. Jackson. And I want to welcome you guys to a very special edition of uh, Aspects of Entrepreneurship. I had to remember what show this was. I'm welcoming you guys to a very special episode of Aspects of Entrepreneurship. As you all come on, please feel free to say hello. I am trying to make sure that I am all ready for you guys. So please forgive me for my tardiness, but as I tell y'all all the time, life happened, and so there are no apologies for that. And so we are on tonight, and what I am doing, let me really quickly share this, and I'm asking that as you all come on, that you all please do the same. For those of you, and I'm hoping that everything is good with internet connection. So y'all let me know if I am freezing. I pray that I'm not freezing. Okay. All right, so it looks like we are good. It looks like we are good on my end. So, what I am talking about tonight, why is it so hard to write the book? Now, what is going on? Y'all give me one quick second because I need to see what is going on with what's going on with Instagram. Y'all, let me tell y'all something before we officially get started. It is so difficult when you are trying to simulcast, right? Meaning that you are trying to broadcast from multiple platforms at the same time because everybody has their own set of rules. So, what I am trying to do is see what's going on. So as y'all come on, I'm gonna, like I said, I want to give a couple seconds. Normally I don't do that. Normally I get started right away, but I'm trying to make sure everything is copacetic for everybody. How about that? Because otherwise it looks like we might not be going live from that shouldn't be a problem. Okay. But we are going to keep it moving. So Instagram, sorry, I tried. Okay, wait. Now they say we are good. Now we are good with Instagram. All right. So, oh Lord. Welcome to Bixby. Oh Lord, y'all. Okay, so we're gonna do this. All right. So let's do this. As you guys come on, that first 3 minutes, just wipe out that first 3 minutes. Hey, Randy, as you all are coming on, please feel free to say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. What we're talking about today is why is it so hard to write the book? I have heard you guys in the inbox. I've heard you on my timeline saying, can you please tell me something? Tell me how in the world to get this going. And matter of fact, let me just see if I can tag somebody real quick. Y'all already know I try my best to not talk and text, and I'll tag them later. So this is what we're gonna do, y'all. I want to let's see. I need Facebook to tell me whether or not I'm froze on y'all end. Okay, because we good. All right, so I'm back good. Okay. So what we're talking about, hey Mama D's, what we are talking about is why is it so hard to write the book? So what I said was this. I wanted to first attack the issues and the excuses that we use, and then kind of give you guys some remedies for those excuses, as well as finally give you a plan to actually get the book started. So, that being said, one of the reasons why we cannot write the book is because we're in our own head, right? Because we tell ourselves that we cannot do it. We tell ourselves it is too difficult. We tell ourselves there's no way in the world that somebody like me can write a book, right? And so, because we tell ourselves that, you tell yourself something long enough, I don't care what it is, positive or negative, you tell yourself long enough, and after a while, you are going to believe it, right? And so you have to understand that it is very important that you feed yourself positive information, that you tell yourself the right things. So The first reason why many people cannot write the book, or why it is that the book is so hard to write, is because we've told ourselves that we can't. We've talked ourselves out of it. We've told ourselves that nobody like me does something like this. I'm not smart enough to do this, right? So get out your head. Get out your head. Stop telling yourself things that are not true. Okay. And you may say, well, who are you to be telling me anything about writing? Glad you asked. I am an international and a national, so both national and international award winning author. I have 17 books to my credit. Um, my first book that I won, that I wrote, won a national award. Second book, fifth book that I wrote, won an international award. Now, unfortunately, I wish it was as simple as being able to say, hey, I have this formula that if you do this, every single book that you write will win an award. And the fact of the matter is that you don't really know what makes for an award winning book, right? It could be that particular contest that you entered, your book, that judge, it just hit. So then, boom, you looked up and you won. It could be great timing, right? Depending on what the content of your book is for the culture that's going on at that current time, that climate. That could be what the formula was. It really is no magic sauce to it. You don't really know, because the fact is that if we knew what exact elements that it took. So even if a contest tells you we're looking for this particular criteria, even if you follow that criteria to a T, it does not guarantee that your book will win, because there are other authors out there, right? There are other books that have been written that may also follow that same criteria. So again, it really isn't a secret formula per se as to what you can do to win and to become an award winning author. Best selling author is a little bit more straightforward, right? Because depending on what type of contest that you are trying to become bestseller for, so whether it's the Amazon, so Amazon top 100, or Wall Street Journal, hey Celestine, Wall Street Journal, or New York Times. Many people know about the New York Times bestseller list, USA Today. There are a lot of different lists that you can go on as a bestseller. So the way to do that is really just to come up with an incredible marketing strategy so that your book will sell the appropriate amount of books to fall into that category. So every one of those contests that I named, or every one of those different people that I named, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all of those, they all have criteria. They all will tell you if you Google it. So it's not a secret. You can Google, what does it take to become a New York Times bestseller, to become a USA Today bestseller, to become a WSJ bestseller, Amazon bestseller. All of that is public information, and you can Google that to find out. Now, just because it's easy to Google it does not mean that it's easy to do. Right. So, like, for example, it might be you have to sell 3,000 books within a 2-week time period or something like that. So, you want to make sure that you know the rules of the game before you start playing. And so, right now, what we're talking about is why is it so hard to write the book? And so, for me, I'm coming to you guys as someone who has written 17 of them, someone who has won awards on both a national and an international level, who's had acclaim locally, nationally, and internationally. Now, for the most part, I don't go out and constantly talk about that this is what it is that I've done, because I'm the type of person that's always looking ahead. However, for a class like this, or a live like this, a broadcast like this, it is necessary for you all to know where the source of your information is coming from. And so, as you all are coming on, if you would please do as Celestine is doing, and thank you so much for hitting that share button and tagging somebody that you believe can benefit from this broadcast. So, What I'm doing is kind of attacking some of the excuses that we make for why we have not written a book. You can feel free to put your reasoning for why you have not written it. If you are that person or you know someone who has said they want to write a book, but they've yet to do it. Put in the reason why you've yet to do it. And if it doesn't fall under one of the reasons that I attack in the live naturally, I will address that one as well. Because again, I've been doing this for over a decade, not just being an author, but I'm also a publisher, I'm an editor, I'm a ghostwriter, a book reviewer. I was a owner of a brick and mortar bookstore for some years. So I'm around words, writers, authors, books all the time. And so I kind of know a thing or two about getting a book written. And so what I like to do is help people to overcome those excuses, to move from an idea that, I'm going to write the book one day to getting the book written today. Right. So whether that physically or literally means that you actually write a book in a day, which from my perspective, we don't write books in days, right? We contribute every day to a book, but we do not write an entire book in a day. Journals, maybe, devotionals, maybe, but an actual book, it's not going to happen in a day. And so the first thing that I did was to talk about the first excuse was just we don't think of ourselves that way. We talk our own selves out of it. I'm not capable of writing a book. This isn't what I do. I'm not the person to do that, right? So the remedy to that is to retrain your brain, retrain yourself as to how you see yourself. So stop saying to yourself that I'm not the type of person to do this, and tell yourself, yes, I can do this, right? Second reason why the book is so hard to write is because of the fact that we are not properly prepared, right? So, what do I mean by that? A lot of times we feel that because so many people have written books, it must be easy to do. So, it must not really take a special skill set. So, I'm just going to sit down and write the book. But then you figure out, but I don't know how to start. How do you get this thing going? Like, I'm a person, I talk all the time, so how come I can't just write this book? Because it's an art to it, because it is an art to it, right? So regardless of whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, regardless as to whether or not you're telling your own story, you're telling the story of someone else, you're creating some faraway land, there is an art to it. Every genre has its own formula, has its own pattern in which it follows, right? Think about movies. If you are watching a drama, there are certain elements to every drama. If you're watching a comedy, if you're watching a romantic movie, every genre has a particular formula that they follow. Now, writers and directors, they can, kind of take that creative control to make it their own signature thing, but it's still going to be a generic formula that's followed, right? Think about various movies that you may have seen that fall under that same category. As a watcher, as a viewer, you can kind of say what you think is about to happen. Why? Because based off of all the other movies that I've seen that's in the same category, I know that this is typically how it's going to go, right? Books are the same thing. So if you're writing science fiction, there are certain elements that goes into it that is the reason why it can be called sci-fi. If you're writing a children's book, there's certain things that go into it. If you're writing an inspirational book, y'all get where I'm going with it. So if you don't know that when you first get started, you're going to be lost, because you're not going to know what elements should go into my book. What should I put in? What shouldn't I put in? And so to that point, your solution is to become well acquainted with an editor and or ghostwriter. Right. So if you're good and you've already started writing and you're on a roll, but then you kind of just hit a stone wall, An editor may be who you need. Now, most of you all just think about editors as those people who, do the subject verb agreement, make sure you don't have run on sentences, make sure that your words are spelled correctly. But the editor has a very important role, right? Because that's just a standard of a basic editor, a copy editor, right? And even like your line editors, but there are different types of editors. I mean, many people don't know that. Many people just generically think I need an editor. And because you don't know there are different layers or levels to editing, you just will take your book to someone who's just good with corrections, and it's not gonna, the value will not, there will be no value added to it in terms of what you're looking for, and you're still stuck. But there's a person that's called the developmental editor, some call them the structural editor, who can take your manuscript and they can read it and they can help to develop it. Thus, the reason why they're called developmental editors. So they can read what it is that you've written and they can help to provide guidance. They can kind of navigate you and say, hey, you know what? I think it'd be great if you add this element. Or in chapter 2, you talked about this, but you just kind of left it blank. Why don't you add some more? Or, they can ask those questions that will help you to, really tell the story. Because sometimes as an author, when you're writing a book, you write it and you're writing or typing so fast, you think that there are things that's on that page that's actually not on that page, right? So, and here's the thing that our mind does to us. In your mind, you've written Johnny went to the store. So even if Johnny went to the store is not on that paper, your mind is going to think that it's on that paper because that's what you thought, right? So it takes having another set of eyes to go behind you and say, you know what? Well, why did this happen? How did Johnny end up here? Well, I said Johnny went to the store. No, you never said Johnny went to the store. Or even if that's the detail, Johnny went to the store, but then next thing you know, Johnny's back home, but somebody got shot. When did that happen? At what point? You see what I'm saying? So you have to learn how to walk readers through a story. Many times you have people that are not good with details, right? And so I've said before, you have some people that they're storytellers and some people are writers. Some people are blessed to be both, where I can write what I'm thinking and is well developed. But some people I can't really see it. Like what I see in my mind, I don't know how to write it, right? And then you have people who they're really great with telling stories, but if you ask them to write down the story, that's where they get lost. So this is the reason why the editor helps the person who's able to get started, but then they get stuck. The developmental or structural editor will be your friend. But then when you have a person who, oh my God, I know how to tell it, but I have no idea how to actually put it together, you will probably need to hire a ghostwriter. Now, a ghostwriter is someone who can literally take what you are thinking and turn those thoughts into a finished manuscript, right? Now, understand that ghostwriters are not cheap because of the fact that this is a very extensive process. This is something that can take, depending on what it is that you're trying to write, this can take anywhere from weeks to months to even years. Okay. So this is a tedious process, it's very time consuming. As a ghostwriter, one of the things that I do is, I'm interviewing the author that I write for. So we have to sit down. And first of all, I have to know who you are because I have to be able to learn your voice. Because if I'm going to write this book the way that you write this book, I have to know how you speak. I have to know all of your little idiosyncrasies. If you do or, whatever your personal slang is, or, all of of those things, your personality must be able to translate into the book, so that way people will actually believe that you wrote it, and not just this is a book that got her name on it, but I know ain't no way in the world that she actually wrote it, because she never speaks that way. You see what I'm saying? A great ghostwriter will make the book sound like it's so authentically you. But that does not just happen overnight. And many writers or aspiring authors, again, because you don't know the process, you feel like it's supposed to just happen overnight. Okay, well, I hired you, so now you're supposed to just get it done. You've been holding on to this idea for a year and a half. You've been holding on to it for a year and a half, but now all of a sudden, because you just hired me yesterday, you think that I'm supposed to have it ready by tomorrow. It doesn't work that way, right? So with ghostwriters, ghostwriters work with you, and ghostwriters are going to learn your style. But again, that's going to take some time, and that's just regular conversations, whether it's conversations over the phone, in person, via email. We have to just talk just so I can learn you. This isn't even anything to do with the book. Then, as I learn you more, then now I can start to figure out, okay, like what is this book going to be about? So that way, as you tell me as much as you know, then I can use my experience and my expertise and take it from there, right? So again, reason two why it's so hard to write a book is because you are not aware of what skills are necessary to actually write the book. This is not something that everybody can do. Does everybody have a story to tell? I personally believe that that answer is yes. But is everybody capable of telling that story on their own? My answer is no. And you need to know which person you are, right? Be honest with yourself. Do not be that person that's like, well, I can just self-publish it, so I'm not going to pay all of that money. I'm not going to pay no editor, no coaches, or no ghostwriters. I can just go ahead and go to Amazon and upload on my own. You can, but why would you? Why would you do that to yourself? Like the first impression that you're making on people as a new author, you want for people to think that you are a quality author. You want for people to respect you as a subject matter expert, meaning whatever it is that you're bringing to the table, if you present it in a way that makes you come across as knowledgeable, then people will respect you and they will come to you more and more, right? That's a whole nother video, whole nother day of things that you can do once the book is written, and how you can position yourself as an expert, and other methods and other fields and industries that you can enter and make money off of once you've written a book. That's after we get the book written. But right now we're talking about why is it so hard to write a book. And so here is another truism why it's so hard, is because we don't give ourselves the time necessary to write the book, right? And I've shared this so many times. It's such a pet peeve of mine to see these ads on Facebook: write a book in 3 days, write a book in 7 days, write a book in 30 days. Because that is really misleading. And so, to a person who has never written a book, they are going to take that literally. You're going to literally believe that you can write your life story in 3 days, or 7 days, or 30 days. You really are going to believe that you can talk about that molestation occurrence, that rape, that, fire, that whatever the traumatic issue that you experience in your life, you would really believe that I can just sit here and pen to paper in 3 days and do it. And if I don't do it, then it's something wrong with me. So I really dislike those ads that promote that you can get an entire book. Again, not a journal, not a devotional, but an entire book written in 3 days, or 7 days, or 30 days. It is very misleading. And I'm telling you that most people, that is like very improbable and next to impossible to do. I will not say never, because there, you never say never. I don't believe in ever saying ever, but, or never saying never. But I will say this, because you may say, well, why are you making a differential between journals and devotionals versus books? Well, if you've ever written a journal or read a journal, purchased a journal, you will notice that most journals are simply line based. So all it is a whole lot of lines. And then every few pages, it might be a question, or every few pages, it might be a quote, or, some type of cutesy something, but there's really not a lot of substance in it. So like, especially if it's a 7-day journal, I come up with 7 questions, then boom, it's done. So yeah, I can sit down, think of 7 questions. Let me put the questions in there. Question 1, then do 10 pages of lines. Question 2, 10 pages of lines. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I can do that in 2-3 days. Devotional, throw out a few scriptures and whatever. I can do that probably in a few days too. Now, I've written 4 devotionals. It took me a year to do my devotionals, okay? Because it was a process for me. When I was writing, putting these devotionals together, this was actually a journey that I was experiencing. These were things that God was taking me through, that led me this scripture to this scripture, this scripture to this scripture. So this wasn't just me like pulling scriptures out of the air. It was an actual journey that I was experiencing, right? And you can't rush the process. And if you don't get anything else that I say, get the fact of me saying you can't rush the process. Thank you all, everybody that's tuned in so far. You are tuning in. Hey, Miss Leah, you guys are tuned in. This segment is called Why Is It So Hard to Write the Book? And so what I'm doing, I'm giving three of the top things that hold us back, reasons, excuses, whatever, from writing it, and remedies to those things. And then I'm going to transition to telling you what it is, ways that you can actually get started. So for those who may have started but you're stuck, I'm going to give you ways from there. Okay. So Celestine says that's what yeah, she says she needs a ghostwriter to write her manuscript. And so let me finish this point, and then I'll go back to the point that I was making about the time. So the first thing that I said, the first reason why it's so hard to write a book is because we underestimate our own abilities, right? We talk ourselves out of writing a book. There's no way that I'm skilled enough. There's no way that I can do it. Somebody like me isn't smart enough. So we talk ourselves out of doing it. That's one of the things that makes it so hard. And that's anything in life. When you talk yourself down from it, I'd never be able to do this. I'd never be able to lose weight. I'd never be able to get that job. You keep speaking that negative energy over your life long enough, and it is going to manifest. And that's biblical. The Bible says the power of life and death lies in the tongue. So if you keep on speaking negative, you're speaking those things that's not, and you're gonna, and before you know it, that's what it's going to be. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason why the book is so hard is because you underestimate the task at hand, right? So you think that, so these are two different people. So you either have the person that's like, oh my God, I'll never be able to do it, or you have the person who thinks that it's nothing to sit down to get it done, right? So this is where I talked about needing that editor or that coach or that ghostwriter, and knowing what the elements that they each bring to the table. I didn't talk about the coach. I'll talk about the coach last or later. But the ghostwriter is very important, and a ghostwriter is very expensive. And the reason why a ghostwriter is expensive, again, is because this is a very tedious and time-consuming process. So most of the time, when you're dealing with a ghostwriter, for many ghostwriters, you may be their only client, and this may be a project that can take 3, 6, 9 months, even a year. So you're going to pay for that time. So there are many ghostwriters, they start at $10,000, and that's cheap. You can get ghostwriters. So like ghostwriters who write for celebrities, they may charge 6 figures, like $100,000, $300,000. Literally, like, this is fact. You can go and you can, you may not be able to research who the writer wrote for, because that's a whole confidentiality clause. But Understand that you're not about to come and pay a ghostwriter $200 or $300. And if you do, either you got a major hookup with that person, or they just started out and they have no clue what they are in for. Okay. But I mean, and I'll just be very clear. My prices as a ghostwriter start at 10,000. Start. And that's before me even knowing exactly what the direction of your project is going to be. That's just to start talking to me, period. And I have friends who are also ghostwriters that's mad at me, like, why are you starting so low? But again, a lot of times with me and my prices, I know who my audience is. And so I typically am trying to work with individuals because I don't like for money to be your problem. I don't like for money to be the reason why you don't accomplish your goal. However, that said, I ain't doing them for free. But just understand that if you do need a ghostwriter, think it not strange if they tell you it's going to be $30,000, it's going to be $60,000. Why is that? Because number one, it's all of their time to write show projects. So it's a very subjective art. So that means that you can't tell somebody what their time is worth. So I might say, okay, I'm gonna charge you X amount of dollars per page. Somebody might say I'm gonna charge you per hour. Somebody might just say, hey, for a project of this magnitude. So it can be any type of way that they deem necessary, right? Or how they deem it appropriate. And so you coming out of pocket with at least 10,000 minimally with a ghostwriter. So do understand that. So that was the second thing. So the third thing that we were talking about, why is it so hard, is because of time. So what I was saying was that, like, when you see these ads, and I really again believe that they're very misleading to say that, oh, you can write a book in 3 days. The reason why I believe that that's misleading is because they don't even know what type of book that you're trying to write, right? So let's say that I'm trying to write my memoir. I'm writing the story, what happened to me. And maybe I've been through a lot of traumatic issues. Do you understand how cathartic it is to write out the things that have happened to you? In many cases, you end up there are triggers that occur. Some people end up kind of reliving that moment. They feel as though they're going through it again. You can't just write down all these different issues that's gonna happen to you like it's a grocery list. It's going to be some things that happen to you. Like if you were raped and you start talking about that all over again, and you start, because in your mind, in order for you to actually tell it, you have to put yourself back in that place. Number one, if you ain't whole, if you have not healed from that, you might start telling that thing, and maybe you might not never walk back to that book again, right? So I would definitely say, like, anytime, and this is a quick sidebar, anytime that you are telling a story that is filled with things that were traumatic occurrences for you, number one, make sure you're whole. Even if you are whole or you're not whole, be consulting some type of counselor, spiritual advisor, some type of have some type of professional that is on standby, because it's very hard. You might start talking about that stuff. You open up those wounds, and guess what? I might got to walk away from that manuscript for about a couple weeks. It might be a month or two, because I need to heal. And you telling me I can write a book in 3 days, and that might just be one occurrence. I might have had multiple things that have happened to me over the course of my life. When I wrote my first and only fiction novel, that is called Love Me Please, it's narrative fiction. Those of you who know or who don't know, maybe narrative fiction is pretty much, is like all of these stories they were based off of true foundation, and then maybe I took the liberty to embellish some to kind of protect the innocence. So you change the names and exaggerate some of the circumstances. But Love Me Please was based off of my life. And so when you start talking about that, it took me 5 years to write this novel. And now that's not say that's the only that nothing else happened, because I want to say I started on it in 2012, and I want to say it was published in 2017. Now, I published a lot of books in between that, but those were the things that's in my wheelhouse, like self-help, inspirational. So it's nothing for me to write a self-help book or whatever, right? But to write this novel where I'm tapping into adultery, I'm tapping into rejection, I'm tapping into like all these different things that I've had to go through. You can't just sit down and just all willy-nilly start writing this stuff and then talking about, well, I'm done. So again, I'm sorry because I didn't mean to go on a tangent with that. But so that's how come I'm very leery when people are telling you that you can write a book in 3 days, because without knowing what I'm going to write about, how can you tell me that I can write it in 3 days without knowing my experiences, without knowing anything about my background, how I deal with trauma? And then not only that, let's say that you're not writing anything that's all deep like that. Let's say that you just writing an inspirational read. You don't know what my life is. So if I have children and a job and this and this and this going on, I'm a caretaker, I do all these things at church or my community or whatever, maybe I don't have 3 days to devote to just sit down and straight write this book. So that's one of the things, me as a coach, because I've done this, all of those things are things that I take into consideration when I'm coaching somebody to write their book. We take your whole life. People call it timeline. I call it a lifeline. I create you a lifeline. So I want to know everything that you have going on in your life. And based off of what you tell me, I'm going to be able to figure out what's a realistic plan for you to just get started writing so that we can start seeing progress. Because one of the best motivations is productivity. When you're actually able to see, man, I went from thinking about doing this book to not the book is done, because people want to wait till the book is done. No, I got a timeline written out. I got my outline now. I done figured out the titles of my chapters. So when you start seeing it coming together, that's what motivates you to do it again. When you are at the place where it's like this, writing the book is just this generic concept, it's overwhelming for you because in your mind you think, okay, well, a book's supposed to be 200 pages. I haven't written one page yet. So how in the world am I going to go to 0 page to 200 pages overnight? It don't happen overnight. It is a process. Remember I told y'all before that it's a process. It's a process. So you start piece by piece. So now, those of you who are tuning in, whether live on a replay, now we're going to go to probably what many of you have been waiting for, which is I'm stuck. I done started. I done went through all that stuff. I overcame the fact of thinking that I couldn't do it. And now I done talked myself actually into doing it. I know that I got to have some folks involved. And whenever it's time for them, I'm going to get those people involved. I done figured out my time and stuff. So I got the time to write. But ain't nothing coming out. I don't know how to write. Where do I start? It's just all up in here. How do I get it from here to here? Okay. So one of the things that you want to do is first of all figure out what type of book you want to write. Right. So I'm not even talking about categorizing it. Is this going to be inspirational self-help? No, just something simple as, is it fiction or nonfiction? Is it about your life or is it not about your life? So just did this stuff, is it real or is it fake? Start out that simple. Celestine says the problem is I have sometimes is writer's block. Okay. See, I have a video for that, Celestine. Y'all go to my website. I'm going to put up my website after a while. My name is Tennille.com. And I have a video for overcoming writer's block. It says when I'm writing, but I speak and tell the story and remember everything. Yeah. Writer's block is also real, right? Because that taps into what I was saying with time. People, you can't put time on creativity, right? With creatives, sometimes we get in that flow, we get in that zone, and I can just hammer out like 3-4 chapters in 2 or 3 days, or 1 or 2 days, depending on what my time look like. But then I hit that writer's block, and I don't care what you're talking about. I can't make now. There are some tricks to helping you to overcome writer's block. But don't just holistically tell somebody you gonna write this book in 3 days, because you don't know if it's possible for what their life looks like, right? So let's go. You got the paper. Leah, you got your paper out. So Leah done already wrote a paper. So I don't care whether y'all old school like me. I got a whole lot of notebooks. I don't even go to my computer until the manuscript is written. But whether you own your computer typing it first, or you got your paper and you're writing it, first thing you want to do is get an outline. Okay, get an outline. What an outline is going to do is help you to figure out. I live by outline. My life is an outline. Okay. Yeah, outlines for everything. So get an outline. What is going to be in the book? You got to figure that out. Everything can't go in the book, okay? And so what an outline, if it's properly used, an outline will help you to decide what should go, what shouldn't go, right? So for example, if you say, because I will say this, hold on before I go into the example. I will say this. A lot of people wrongly feel like you're supposed to tell about every detail of your life. If you over 2 years old, tell them about every detail from time you was a year old. That's gonna make it into like a 500-page book. Folks don't read 500-page books like that. I mean, like, unless you just a diehard novelist, but you got to understand where it's coming from. So don't do that to yourself. Like, if you know that there are a lot of different books in you or a lot of different things, you can either figure out, turn it into a series or, something like that. But that's a whole nother something for another day. Get you an outline. Figure out what type of stuff do I want to talk about? What type of stuff don't I want to talk about? So that way they don't overlap. The stuff that you want to talk about, is it really interesting? Ask yourself that. Not just, and then if you ask yourself, is it interesting? And yourself says yes. Then the next question to that is, what makes it interesting? And these ain't full out sentences. These are just bullet points that you're saying, because this is what's going to ultimately go over to be included. What makes it interesting? Well, it's relatable. Nobody else ever heard about it. This, whatever it is, that everybody else has gone through it, or it happened during World War II, or like whatever it is, get yourself some bullet points for that. But you want to use an outline to just start to develop your thoughts, because a lot of times we just have everything in here and it's jumbled. So now you have to take it from here to get it on the paper, so that way you can get some type of direction and insight. How do I go? How do I take this next? So a lot of the stuff, you might throw out some things, and you'll find out some events, these are just isolated events. There's nothing else that I can do with it. So it don't even really make sense to talk about it, because, or you know what, maybe I can talk about it, but it'll be best as a supporting detail. Like, this shouldn't be, if all I got is a page for this shouldn't be its own chapter. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you start to actually, and writing an outline can take you a day or two. I'm just being very honest with you. One of the things to understand from the get-go is that it's called a first draft for a reason, because you might have a second, a third, a fifth, a 10th. Like, it's not strange to ball up paper or hit the delete button and start all over again, right? Because you will know when you've hit the right note, when you get in that flow, when it's like, it's just easy for you to just kind of start talking about it. And also understand this, you don't always think in chronological order. So just because, don't try to force yourself to, okay, this is chapter 1. Let's start with chapter 1. No. Again, this is why the outline is so important. Just start creating the concepts of what it is that you want to talk about, and let them speak to you. I hope that this is helping somebody. So if you're talking about your life story, okay, so maybe you were a teen mom, maybe you got pregnant at 12, maybe you got married at 19, maybe your parents were born during World War II. Whatever your thoughts are that you want to include, write those thoughts out. Then write bullet point some details under each of those things that you feel would be great to go in the book. As you're bullet pointing them, you're going to be able to see, is it a lot of details under this? Yes or no? If there are a lot of details that's really tying back to the overall point of the story, keep it. It can be a chapter. If it's just like something random and all you can think about is maybe like a paragraph, then again, that becomes a supporting idea. And then you know that you'll just throw it into an existing chapter, if that makes sense, right? So as you're going through and you're bullet pointing, because again, you ain't wrote nothing all the way out yet. You just bullet pointing all of these things. Okay, now I got this stuff, but I don't really know where to start. Where do I start? Where whatever leads you, like, so when you wrote, whatever is speaking to you the most is where you start, like, because it all got to come out anyway, right? Before the book is done, you're gonna get to all of it anyway. Just because this is what you have decided is chapter one, that don't mean that your mind is going to release the details in full for chapter one right now. But you pick up something and say it was an argument between you and your father, or your parents had a fight or something, that might be as vivid as all outdoors. Go with that. Let that experience take you where it takes you until you're done. One of the things you will learn, like, creative projects take on a life of their own. Like whether you're writing a song, you're creating a film, like when you start writing, those juices flow. You might sit down thinking this is what this book is going to be, but the book ends up showing you what is going to be. That's why you have to be open to changing, to adjusting, because you might have thought, okay, well, this book is going to be a story about this. But as you begin to write, more details are coming out, and it's actually more a story about something else. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can always kind of change the supporting details to fit whatever it is that you're talking about. So I'm hoping that this is helping. So you're sitting down and you're like, okay, so I'm just trying to figure it out. As you have your outline, and your outline is telling you these are the different things I want to write about. I want to write about the birth of my children. I want to write about getting married. I want to write about my divorce. I want to write about bankruptcy. I want to write about whatever the issue is. If you're writing a self-help book, this is what I want to talk about. I want to, and these are the 5 points or the 7 points that I'm going to do. So identify what it is that you're looking to do. Once you do that, then look at each of those as kind of becoming their own books by themselves, right? And so, no, they're not going to be 100 pages, but what all information do I have about this particular point? Write all of that out. What do I have about this particular point? You see what I'm saying? And then just be prepared to be inspired, because there may be times where you done wrote everything, but then you watch a TV program, or you listen to some music, or you're walking outside, and because you've opened up your mind, you see what I'm saying, because you started this process, now your mind is an amazing thing, because things that you may have forgotten about, when you hear a song and you ain't heard this song in ages, and then that song plays and it takes you back to your teenage years, or it takes you back to when you were a little girl, and you remember that exact moment. You remember when you heard that song playing, you was sitting down, you was eating ice cream, and you was outside playing jump rope with your girlfriend. You remember her exact name, and y'all went to y'all's best friends in third grade. But had that song not played, there would have not been anything to trigger you to have that thought, because you ain't thinking about this girl. You ain't had no ice cream in ages. That's what happens when you begin to write. When you start putting all of this stuff pen to paper, okay, this is the stuff I want to talk about. I want to talk about the birth of my children. Think about it. You don't talk every day about the birth of your children. Like, you might say, I thank God for my kids, but in regular everyday life, you don't sit down and force yourself to think about the surrounding circumstances of the birth of your children, right? And I'm glad that it's helping both of y'all, Celestine and Leah. But you don't think about that on a regular basis. So when you sit down and you're like, okay, I'm going to talk about the birth of my children, what about it? Ooh, that's good. What about it? Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm gonna end it with this. I'm gonna give y'all, and here's another thing that I do all the time: who, what, when, where, why, how. I don't care. Many videos, when y'all go to my website, my name is Tennille.com. A lot of videos that I do, I don't care what the subject matter is. I typically incorporate who, what, when, where, why, how. Why? Because when you answer those questions, it's typically going to help you go to the next level. I don't care what it is we're talking about. I don't care if we're talking about money matters, time management. When I show y'all how to implement who, what, when, where, why, how, is really going to help you, right? So these are some of the things I want for y'all to think about. And told you about the outline. These are the last tips I'm gonna give y'all. Y'all see why I say that this could be a webinar. So I love y'all because normally stuff like this would be a webinar, but I just want to gift this to you guys. So think about the who. Who is this book going to be about? So again, we're talking about the person. This next 6 pieces: who, what, when, where, why, how. This is for the person who I'm sitting down, and I know I want to write, but I have no idea what to do. So I told you about getting an outline. Okay, Tennille, I got the outline, and I done kind of threw out some ideas, but I'm still stuck. Who? What? So answer that question. Either who is the book going to be about? There should be some character. I don't care whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Who is the book about? That's a good way to get started, because when you think about the who, so if the book is about your dad, in your mind you think, well, why am I writing about my dad? What is it about my dad? You see what I'm saying? So who is the book about? Who is the book about? Who, what is the purpose for you writing the book? So if it is your story, what is it about your story that you want to share? If it is a self-help, what is it that you're trying to share with people? So what is it that you want for people to know by the time they finish reading this book? What? When? If you're writing a story, throughout your story, again, I don't care if it's fiction or nonfiction, there should be wins that's filled in. When did this take place? When did this happen? When? Because that's a part of details, right? Don't just tell it, show it, especially if you're going on the fiction side. Make sure to give details. Don't say, I graduated. When did you graduate? And then if you give the date, when you see what I'm saying? Like, when did this happen? When was this going on? So it was a snowy night in December when I found this, or when I graduated. So you want to have the when, who, or when, where. Where does the story take place? Okay. So again, I don't care if it's fiction or nonfiction. Where, and even if it's not where is the story taking place, where do people go to get the help, or where do people go to whatever? So if you're writing a self-help book, where would people go to find the answer? Where would, and this is what you're thinking in your head as you're writing. These are the questions that you're answering: who, what, when, where, why. Why do they need to read this book? If the content in the book is not answering that, you're not doing your job as a writer. You have to understand that as a writer, you are not going to be sitting next to your reader. You are not going to be able to explain to that reader what you meant when you wrote this. So you have to allow your words to speak for you. So make sure that when you write a book, that you have a thesaurus next to you. Don't keep using the same like. Get some synonyms. Like, literally, Google synonym for like, synonym for just, synonym for, you should be able to say the same thing in 3 to 4 to 5 different ways. If you read your paper, if on one page, and this is the editor Tennille coming through. If on one page you got the same word, so just, I just went to the store, I just called her, I just want to see, I just want to say, if that same word appear on the, I've had clients I'm sorry, y'all, because this is like really a pet peeve. I've had clients to do like the same word 5 times in the same paragraph. So that's definitively a no-no. You should not. Okay, so from a technical standpoint, and this is a little bit too much for y'all because this is once the book is done and y'all ain't there yet. But so this is just a sidebar later on. So typically 250 to 300 words is what goes on the standard page, 12 font times New Roman. Okay. So that's about 4 to maybe 6 paragraphs, 3 to 5 sentences for a paragraph. So if you done, if I see the same word, just, only, like, those are some of our favorite words. Get If you don't invest, you don't even gotta have a physical thesaurus no more. If you don't have your Google tab open when you writing, I'm gonna come and get you. Okay, I'm coming. Don't have another way of saying it. You can even Google, how do you say blah, blah, blah? See what Google has to say about it, okay? But do not constantly repeat yourself because that's one of the quickest ways to get a reader to just want to throw the book. All right. Like you want to have them engaged. So figure out your tone, right? So, meaning, is this going to be a first person? Is it I, me, my? Is it third person where you're speaking of yourself in the third person? She, her. What tone, what voice are you going to use? And whatever it is that you decide, be consistent throughout the book. So if you start out and you're referring to yourself in the third person, then you can't in paragraph 1 talk from third person, and then by paragraph 3 now magically you the first person. Like there has to be transitions, but again, that's another video because this is once y'all actually have written. This is a whole editing thing, so I'm sorry the editor and me came out. So let's go back. Who, what, when, where, why are you writing this book? Why? It has to be a why. There has to be something that I want for you to know. So if you're writing your own story, okay, and again, this is how we formulate our synopsis or that summary that's on the back of the book. This is why you're reading this book. I wanted you to know my story, or by the time you finish reading this book, it'll help you know 3 keys to overcome blah blah blah, or 7 keys to do da 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 da, or these 5 tips. So typically, the why, you're either educating, you're informing, you're entertaining. Why are you doing this? And then your how. How are you going to make it happen? How are you going to pull it together? So typically the how is answered in your setup, in your, is it, your chapters. That's going to be your how you're going to get this done, right? So when you're writing, that's what I want you guys to be thinking about. You got your outline. Your outline is there. You got the bullet points. So you're figuring out what is it that you want to write about. Bullet point those things. If you don't have at least 3 bullet points, it don't need to be its own chapter. If you have 3 to 5 bullet points and more, then it's definitely a chapter. If you got like 10 bullet points, that means you got to figure out how to break that thing up. That's too much. That's too much. So figure out how to break it up, right? But a chapter should be able to cover at least 3 points. If you can't cover at least 3 points, it becomes a sub chapter. That means you're gonna throw it in as a bullet point under something else, right? So you got that, and then like I said, answer those questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's going to always apply to everything that you do. Chapter by chapter, you should be able to go back and revisit. Did I cover the who, what, when, where, why, how to every chapter? Who is this chapter about? Is that very clear? What is this chapter about? Did I make that clear? When did the stuff that's going on in this chapter take place? Did I address that? Where were we at when this stuff happened? Is that an issue? Do you see what I'm saying? So those are really, that's how you get started. And if you do that, it should be no problem getting your points out. Now, again, you may not write in order. It's not mandatory that you write in order. You just want to get it done. Once you have gone as far as you can go, so say you have written out 3, 4, 5 chapters, and now you stuck, even 1 or 2 chapters, and now you're stuck. That's where your developmental editor comes into play. Get somebody who knows this thing, who gets what it is your vision is, what it is you're trying to make happen, and let them read it and be open to constructive criticism. Be open to this wasn't necessarily a good idea, but let me show you how to turn it into a good idea. Okay. Like, as creators, we're very sensitive about our stuff. We think that everything we write is the best, and it's not. It's not. So understand that if you are going to hire an editor, a ghostwriter, what have you, then lean and depend on their expertise to help you to execute your vision. So, all right, guys, I'm hoping that's great. And if it's not, that's an hour, so that's my time. For those of you who are not already doing so, you can follow me on either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter at APS International. I just recently dropped the whole educated and empowered branding. That's a whole different show, so we'll talk about that another time. But again, if you all have not already done so, you can feel free to again, we talked about the different editors, publishers, all that stuff, coaching. You can go to weareaps.com. That is the organizational website for artists promoting success. And you can figure out if you need some services that's offered there, right? If you all enjoy what you heard tonight, you're like, hey, Tennille, I know realistically that if I would have went anywhere, I could not have gotten that for free. Then you can feel free to send a donation. Hit me up in Cash App, $ APS, the letter N, International, APS, the letter N, International. If this is just something that you really appreciate it. But again, I just wanted to let you guys know that you can also work with me one-on-one. Sometimes my availability is limited, but if you go to that website, which is weareaps.com, you are able to schedule a consultation. Like, you'll be able to, if you want to talk with me, consultations, 15 minutes, are free. But then beyond that, there are paid options that will get you more detailed time with me. And so again, if you're looking for coaching, whatever, all of that, when you go to weareaps.com, it very well may redirect you to my personal website, which is mynameistenille.com. But I'm hoping that this helped. If it did, I'm so happy. I pray that it gets you guys up and going. But again, if you need additional videos, you can go to mynameistenille.com. Look at what it is that I offer in terms of videos, and you can order video and we can get you that video. So this is what I instructional video. So I have, as a coach, I offer you guys either one-on-one sessions and programs. You have instructional videos that, like this, if you like this type of thing where somebody is just kind of walking you through how to do it, then we have that. There's a master class that I'm working on that I look to be available sometime in November. So I've been working on that as well. So in either case, guys, I appreciate you all so much. Tomorrow, I will be back with Inspirational Talk with Tennille, but this time it is the Creating Powerful Black Men's edition. So on Tuesdays, I'm dealing with the ladies. On Thursdays, I'm dealing with the guys. And my guest is none other than Mr. Charles Dixon. So I'm asking that you all join me live at 5 tomorrow to see what it is that he has to say. But I thank you guys all so much for everything that you all have done. And if you enjoyed this, thank you, Celestine, so much for tagging all of those people. But hit the share button. Tag somebody also that you know, that you believe would benefit from this broadcast. So thank you all so much. And until next time, you all stay inspired.